The 12th book of Homer's Iliads. The argument. The Trojans at the trench their powers engage, though greeted by a bird of bad presage. In 5 parts they divide their power to scale, and Prince Sarpedon forceth down the pale. Great Hector from the ports tears out a stone, and with so dead a strength he sets it gone. At those broad gates the Grecians made to guard their tents and ships, that, broken and unbarred, they yield way to his power, when all contend to reach the ships, which all at last ascend. Another argument. Mew works the Trojans all the grace, and doth the Grecian fort deface. Patroclus thus employed in cure of hurt Eurypylus. Both hosts are all for other wounds doubly contentious, one always laboring to expel, the other to invade. Nor could the broad dike of the Greeks, or that strong wall they made to guard their fleet, be long unrazed, because it was not raised by grave direction of the gods, nor were their deities praised, when they begun, with hecatombs, that then they might be sure, their strength being seasoned well with heavens, it should have force to endure, and so the safeguard of their fleet, and all their treasure there, infallibly had been confirmed, when now their bulwarks were, not only without power of check to their assaulting foe, even now as soon as they were built, but apt to overthrow, such as in very little time shall bury all their sight and thought that ever they were made, as long as the despite of great Aeacides held up, and Hector went not down, and that by those 2 means stood safe King Priam's sacred town. So long their rampire had some use, though now it gave some way. But when Troy's best men suffered fate, and many Greeks did pay dear for their sufferance, then the rest home to their country turned. The 10th year of wars at Troy, and Troy was sacked and burned, and then the gods fell to their fort. Then they their powers employ to ruin their work, and left less of that than they of Troy. Neptune and Phoebus tumbled down from the Idalian hills, an inundation of all floods, that thence the broad sea fills on their huge rampire, in one glut. All these together roared, Rhesus, Heptaporus, Rhodius, Scamander the adored, Carissus, Simois, Grenicus, Aesepus. Of them all Apollo opened the rough mouths, and made their lusty fall ravish the dusty champaign, where many a helm and shield and half-god race of men were strewed. And that all these might yield full tribute to the heavenly work, Neptune and Phoebus won Jove to unburthen the black wombs of clouds, filled by the sun, and pour them into all their streams, that quickly they might send the huge wall swimming to the sea. 9 days their lights did spend to nights in tempests, and when all their utmost depth had made, Jove, Phoebus, Neptune, all came down, and all in state did wade to ruin of that impious fort. Great Neptune went before, wrought with his trident, and the stones, trunks, roots of trees he tore out of the rampire, tossed them all into the Hellespont. Even all the proud toil of the Greeks, with which they durst confront the to-be-shunned deities, and not a stone remained of all their huge foundations, all with the earth were planed. Which done, again the gods turned back the silver-flowing floods by that vast channel, through whose vaults they poured abroad their broods, and covered all the ample shore again with dusty sand. And this the end was of that wall, where now so many a hand was emptied of stones and darts, contending to invade, where clamour spent so high a throat, and where the fell blows made the new-built wooden turrets groan. And here the Greeks were pent, tamed with the iron whip of Jove, that terrors vehement shook over them by Hector's hand, who was in every thought the terror-master of the field, and like a whirlwind fought as fresh as in his morn's first charge. and as a savage boar or lion, hunted long, at last, with hounds and hunters' store, is compassed round, they charge him close, and stand, as in a tower they had enchased him, pouring on of darts an iron shower. His glorious heart yet not appalled, and forcing forth his way, here overthrows a troop, and there a running ring doth stay his utter passage, when again that stay he overthrows, and then the whole field frees his rage. So Hector wearies blows, runs out his charge upon the fort, and all his force would force to pass the dike, which being so deep they could not get their horse to venture on, but trample, snore, and on the very brink to neigh with spirit, yet still stand off. Nor would a human think the passage safe, or if it were, 'twas less safe for retreat, the dike being everywhere so deep, and where 'twas least deep, set with stakes exceeding thick, sharp, strong, that horse could never pass, much less their chariots after them. Yet for the foot there was some hopeful service, which they wished. Polydamas then spake, Hector, and all our friends of Troy, we indiscreetly make offer of passage with our horse. Ye see the stakes, the wall, impossible for horse to take, nor can men fight at all, the place being strait, and much more apt to let us take our bane than give the enemy. And yet, if Jove decree the wane of Grecian glory utterly, and so bereave their hearts, that we may freely charge them thus, and then we'll take our parts, I would with all speed wish the assault, that ugly shame might shed, thus far from home, these Grecian bloods. But if they once turn head and sally on us from their fleet, when in so deep a dike we shall lie struggling, not a man of all our host is like to live and carry back the news. And therefore be it thus, here leave we horse kept by our men, and all on foot let us hold close together, and attend the grace of Hector's guide, and then they shall not bear our charge, our conquest shall be dyed in their lives' purples. This advice pleased Hector, for 'twas sound, who first obeyed it, and fully armed betook him to the ground, and then all left their chariots when he was seen to lead, rushing about him, and gave up each chariot and steed to their directors to be kept, in all procinct of war, there and on that side of the dike, and thus the rest prepare their onset. In 5 regiments they all their power divide, each regiment allowed 3 chiefs, of all which even the pride served in great Hector's regiment, for all were set on fire, their passage beaten through the wall, with hazardous desire that they might once but fight at fleet. With Hector captains were Polydamas and Cebriones, who was his charioteer, but Hector found that place a worse. Chiefs of the second band were Paris and Alcathous, Agenor. The command the third strong phalanx had was given to the augur Helenus, Deiphobus, that godlike man, and mighty Asius, even Asius Hirticides, that from Arisba rode the huge bay horse, and had his house where the river Celeus flowed. The fourth charge good Aeneas led, and with him were combined Archelicus and Acamas, and Tenor's dearest kind, and excellent at every fight. The 5th brave company Sarpedon had to charge, who chose for his command supply Asteropicius, great in arms, and Glaucus, for both these were best of all men but himself, but he was fellowless. Thus fitted with their well-wrought shields, down the steep dike they go, and, thirsty of the wall's assault, believe in overthrow, not doubting but with headlong falls to tumble down the Greeks from their black navy, in which trust all on, and no man seeks to cross Polydamas' advice with any other course, but Asius Hirticides, who, proud of his bay horse, would not forsake them, nor his man, that was their manager, fool that he was, but all to fleet, and little knew how near an ill death sat him, and assure, and that he never more must look on lofty Ilion, but looks and all before put on the all-covering mist of fate, that then did hang upon the lance of great Duke Iliad. He fatally rushed on the left-hand way, by which the Greeks with horse and chariot came usually from field to fleet. Close to the gates he got, which both unbarred and ope found, that so the easier might an entry be for any friend that was behind in flight. Yet not much easier for a foe, because there was a guard maintained upon it, past his thought, who still put for it hard, eagerly shouting, and with him were 5 more friends of name, that would not leave him, though none else would hunt that way for fame, in their free choice, but he himself. Orestes, Almanus, and Achaean Alcides, Thoon, Enomaus, were those that followed Asius. Within the gates they found 2 eminently valorous, that from the race renowned of the right valiant Lapithes derived their high descent. Fierce Leonteus was the one, like Mars in detriment, the other mighty Polypete, the great Pirithous' son. These stood within the lofty gates, and nothing more did shun the charge of Asius and his friends, than 2 high hill-bred oaks, well rooted in the binding earth, obey the airy strokes of wind and weather, standing firm gainst every season's spite. Yet they pour on continued shouts, and bear their shields upright, when in the mean space Polypete and Leonteus cheered their soldiers to the fleet's defence. But when the rest had heard the Trojans in attempt to scale, clamour and flight did flow amongst the Grecians. And then, the rest dismayed, these 2 met Asius entering, thrust him back, and fought before the doors. Nor fared they then like oaks that stood, but as a brace of boars, couched in their own bred hill, that hear a sort of hunter's shout, and hounds in hot trail coming on, then from their dens break out, traverse their force, and suffer not, in wildness of their way, about them any plant to stand, but thickets offering stay, break through, and rend up by the roots, wet gnashes into air, which tumult fills with shouts, hounds, horns, and all the hot affair beats at their bosoms, so their arms rung with assailing blows, and so they stirred them in repulse, right well assured that those who were within and on the wall would add their parts, who knew they now fought for their tents, fleet lives, and fame, and therefore threw stones from the walls and towers, as thick as when a drift wind shakes black clouds in pieces, and plucks snow in great and plumy flakes from their soft bosoms, till the ground be wholly clothed in white. So earth was hid with stones and darts, darts from the Trojan fight, stones from the Greeks, that on the helms and bossy Trojan shields kept such a rapping it amazed great Asius, who now yields, sighs, beats his thighs, and in a rage his fault to Jove applies. "O Jove," said he, "now clear thou show us thou art a friend to lies, pretending in the flight of Greece, the making of it good, to all their ruins, which I thought could never be withstood. Yet they, as yellow wasps or bees, that having made their nest the grasping cranny of a hill, when for a hunter's feast hunters come hot and hungry in, and dig for honeycombs, then fly upon them, strike and sting, and from their hollow homes will not be beaten, but defend their labour's fruit and brood. No more will these be from their port, but either lose their blood, although but 2 against all us, or be our prisoner made." All this, to do his action grace, could not firm Jove persuade, who for the general council stood, and 'gainst his singular brave bestowed on Hector that day's fame. Yet he and these behaved themselves thus nobly at this port, but how at other ports, and all alongst the stony wall sole force, 'gainst force and forts, raged in contention twixt both hosts, it were no easy thing, had I the bosom of a god, to tune to life and sing. The Trojans fought not of themselves, a fire from heaven was thrown, that ran amongst them, through the wall, mere added to their own. The Greeks held not their own, weak grief went with her withered hand, and dipped it deeply in their spirits, since they could not command their forces to abide the field, whom harsh necessity to save those ships should bring them home, and their good forts supply, drave to the expulsive fight they made, and this might stoop them more than need itself could elevate, for even gods did deplore their dire estates, and all the gods that were their aids in war, who, though they could not clear their plights, yet were their friends thus far, still to uphold the better sort, for then did Polypete pass, a lance at Damasus, whose helm was made with cheeks of brass, yet had not proof enough, the pile drave through it and his skull, his brain in blood drowned, and the man, so late so spiritful, fell now quite spiritless to earth. So emptied he the veins of Pylon and Ormenus' lives. And then Leonteus gains the life's end of Hippomachus, Antimachus' son. His lance fell at his girdle stead, and with his end begun another end. Leonteus left him, and through the priest, his keen sword drawn, ran desperately upon Antiphates, and lifeless tumbled him to earth. Nor could all these lives quench his fiery spirit, that his flame in Menon's blood did drench, and raged up even to Iomen's and young Orestes' life. All heaped together made their peace in that red field of strife, whose fair arms while the victors spoiled, the youth of Ilion, of which there served the most and best, still boldly built upon the wisdom of Polydamas and Hector's matchless strength, and followed, filled with wondrous spirit, with wish and hope at length, the Greeks' wall won, to fire their fleet. But having passed the dike, and willing now to pass the wall, this prodigy did strike their hearts with some deliberate stay, a high-flown eagle's sword on their troops' left hand, and sustained a dragon all engorged in her strong seers of wondrous size, and yet had no such check in life and spirit, but still she fought, and turning back her neck, so stung the eagle's gorge, that down she cast her fervent prey amongst the multitude, and took upon the winds her way, crying with anguish. When they saw a branded serpent sprawl so full amongst them from above, and from Jove's fowl let fall, they took it and ostent from him, stood frighted, and their cause Polydamas thought just, and spake, Hector, you know, applause of humour hath been far from me, nor fits it, or in war, or in affairs of court, a man employed in public care, to blanch things further than their truth, or flatter any power. And therefore, for that simple course, your strength has oft been sour to me in counsels. Yet again, what shows in my thoughts best, I must discover. Let us cease, and make their flight our rest, for this day's honour, and not now attempt the Grecian fleet. For this, I fear, will be the event the prodigy doth meet, so full with our affair in hand. As this high-flying fowl upon the left wing of our host, implying our control, hovered above us, and did truss within her golden sears a serpent so embrued and big, which yet in all her fears kept life and fervent spirit to fight, and wrought her own release, nor did the eagle's eyrie feed. So though we thus far prease upon the Grecians, and perhaps may overrun their wall, our high minds aiming at their fleet, and that we much appall their trussed spirits, yet are they so serpent-like disposed, that they will fight, though in our seers, and will at length be loosed with all our outcries, and the life of many a Trojan breast shall with the eagle fly, before we carry to our nest them or their navy. Thus expounds the augur this ostent, whose depth he knows, and these should fear. Hector, with countenance bent, thus answered him, Polydamas, your depth in augury I like not, and know passing well thou dost not satisfy thyself in this opinion, or if thou thinkst it true, thy thoughts the gods blind to advise and urge that as our due, that breaks our duties, and to Jove, whose vow and sign to me is passed directly for our speed, yet light-winged birds must be. By thy advice, our oracles, whose feathers little stay my serious actions, what care I if this or the other way their wild wings sway them, if the right, on which the sun doth rise, or to the left hand, where he sets? 'Tis Jove's high counsel flies with those wings that shall bear up us, Jove's, that both earth and heaven, both men and gods, sustains and rules. One augury is given to order all men, best of all, fight for thy country's right. But why fearest thou our further charge? For though the dangerous fight strew all men here about the fleet, yet thou needst never fear to bear their fates. Thy wary heart will never trust thee where an enemy's look is, and yet fight. For if thou darest abstain, or whisper into any ear an abstinence so vain as thou advisest, never fear that any foe shall take thy life from thee, for 'tis this lance. This said, all forwards make, himself the first, yet before him exulting clamour flew, and thunder-loving Jupiter from lofty Ida blew a storm that ushered their assault, and made them charge like him. It drave directly on the fleet, a dust so fierce and dim that it amazed the Grecians, but was a grace divine to Hector and his following troops, who wholly did incline to him, being now in grace with Jove, and so put boldly on to raise the rampire, in whose height they fiercely set upon the parapets, and pulled them down, raised every foremost fight, and all the buttresses of stone that held their towers upright, they tore away with crows of iron, and hoped to ruin all. The Greeks yet stood, and still repaired the forefights of their wall, with hides of oxen, and from thence they poured down stones in showers upon the underminers' heads. Within the foremost towers both aegis had command, who answered every part. The assaulters and their soldiers repressed and put in heart. Repairing valor as their wall, spake some fair, some reproved, whoever made not good his place, and thus they all sorts moved. O countrymen, now need in aid would have excess be spent. The excellent must be admired, the meanest excellent. The worst do well. In changing war all should not be alike, nor any idle, which to know fits all, lest Hector strike your minds with frights, as ears with threats. Forward be all your hands, urge one another. This doubt down, that now betwixt us stands, Jove will go with us to their walls. To this effect aloud spake both the princes, and as high with this the expulsion flowed. And as in winter time, when Jove his cold sharp javelins throws amongst us mortals, and is moved to white earth with his snows, the winds asleep he freely pours till highest prominence, hilltops, low meadows, and the fields that crown with most contents the toils of men, seaports and shores are hid, and every place but floods that snow's fair tender flakes as their own brood embrace. So both sides covered earth with stones, so both for life contend. To show their sharpness, through the wall uproar stood up an end, nor had great Hector and his friends the rampire overrun, if heaven's great counsellor, high Jove, had not inflamed his son, Sarpedon, like the forest's king, when he on oxen flies. Against the Grecians his round targe he to his arm applies, brass-leaved without, and all within thick ox-hides quilted hard, the verge nailed round with rods of gold, and with 2 darts prepared he leads his people, as ye see a mountain lion fair, long kept from prey, enforcing which his high mind makes him dare assault upon the whole full fold, though guarded never so with well-armed men and eager dogs, away he will not go, but venture on and either snatch a prey or be a prey. So fared divine Sarpedon's mind, resolved to force his way through all the forefights and the wall, yet since he did not see others as great as he in name, as great in mind as he spake to Glaucus, Glaucus, say, why are we honored more than other men of Lycia in place, with greater store of meats and cups, with goodlier roofs, delightsome gardens, walks, more lands and better, so much wealth that court and country talks of us and our possessions, and every way we go, gaze on us as we were the gods. This where we dwell is so. The shores of Xanthus ring of this, and shall we not exceed as much in merit as in noise? Come, be we great indeed, as well as look, shine not in gold, but in the flames of fight, that so our neat-armed Lycians may say, see, these are right, our kings, our rulers, these deserve to eat and drink the best. These govern not ingloriously, these thus exceed the rest, do more than they command to do. O friend, if keeping back would keep back age from us, and death, and that we might not wrack in this life's human sea at all, but that, deferring now, we shun death ever, nor would I half this vain valor show, nor glorify a folly so, to wish thee to advance. But since we must go, though not here, and that besides the chance, propose now, there are infinite fates of other sort in death, which neither to be fled or scaped, a man must sink beneath. Come, try we, if this sort be ours, and either render thus glory to others, or make them resign the like to us. This motion Glaucus shifted not, but without words obeyed. For right went both, a mighty troop of Lycians followed, which by Menestheus observed, his hair stood up on end. For at the tower where he had charge, he saw Calamity bend her horrid brows in their approach. He threw his looks about, the whole fight's near, to see what chief might help the misery out of his poor soldiers, and beheld where both the Ajaces fought, and Teucer, newly come from fleet, whom it would profit not to call, since tumult on their helms, shields, and upon the ports, laid such loud claps for every way, defences of all sorts were adding, as Troy took away, and clamour flew so high, her wings struck heaven, and drowned all voice. The two dukes yet so nigh, and at the offer of assault, he to the Ajaces sent Thoas the herald with this charge, run to the regiment of both the Ajaces, and call both, for both were better here, since here will slaughter instantly be more enforced than there. The Lycian captains this way make, who in the fights of stand have often showed much excellence, yet if laborious hand be there more needful than I hope, at least afford us some. Let Ajax Telamonius and the archer Teucer come. The herald hasted and arrived, and both the Ajaces told that Petis' noble son desired their little labour would employ himself in succouring him. Both their supplies were best, since death assailed his quarter most, for on it fiercely pressed the well-proved mighty Lycian chiefs. Yet if the service there allowed not both, he prayed that one part of his charge would bear, and that was Ajax Telamon, with whom he wished would come the archer Teucer. Telamon left instantly his room to strong Lycomedes, and willed Ajax Iliades with him to make up his supply, and fill with courages the Grecian hearts till his return, which should be instantly when he had well relieved his friend. With this the company of Teucer he took to his aid, Teucer that did descend, as Ajax did, from Telamon. With these two did attend Pandion that bore Teucer's bow. When to Menestheus' tower they came, alongst the wall, they found him, and his heart and power, toiling and making strong their fort. The Lycian princes set, black whirlwind-like, with both their powers upon the parapet. Ajax and all resisted them. Clamour amongst them rose. The slaughter Ajax led, who first the last dear sight did close of strong Epicles, that was friend to Jove's great Lycian son. Amongst the high munition heap, a mighty marble stone lay highest, near the pinnacle, a stone of such a pace that one of this time's strongest men with both hands could not raise. Yet this did Ajax rouse and throw, and all in sherds did drive, Epicles, fore-topped casque and skull, who, as ye see one dive in some deep river, left his height, life left his bones withal. Teucer shot Glaucus, rushing up yet higher on the wall, where naked he discerned his arm, and made him steal retreat from that hot service, lest some Greek, with an insulting threat, beholding it, might fright the rest. Sarpedon much was grieved at Glaucus' parting, yet fought on, and his great heart relieved a little with Alcmaeon's blood, surnamed Thestorides, whose life he hurled out with his lance, which following through the priest he drew from him. Down from the tower Alcmaeon dead it struck, his fair arms wringing out his death. Then fierce Sarpedon took in his strong hand the battlement, and down he tore it quite. The wall stripped naked, and broad way for entry and full fight he made the many. Against him Ajax and Teucer made. Teucer the rich belt on his breast did with a shaft invade, but Jupiter averted death, who would not see his son die at the tails of the Argive ships. Ajax did fetch his run, and with his lance struck through the targe of that brave Lycian king. Yet kept he it from further pass, nor did it anything dismay his mind. Although his men stood off from that high way, his valor made them, which he kept, and hoped that stormy day should ever make his glory clear. His men's fault thus he blamed. O Lycians, why are your hot spirits so quickly disinflamed? Suppose me ablest of you all, 'tis hard for me alone to ruin such a wall as this, and make confusion way to their navy. Lend your hands. What many can dispatch, one cannot think. The noble work of many hath no match. The wise king's just rebuke did strike a reverence to his will through all his soldiers. All stood in, and 'gainst all the Argives still made strong their squadrons, insomuch that to the adverse side the work showed mighty, and the wall, when 'twas within descried, no easy service. Yet the Greeks could neither free their wall of these brave Lycians that held firm the place they first did scale. Nor could the Lycians from their fort the sturdy Grecians drive, nor reach their fleet, but as two men about the limit strive of land that toucheth in a field, their measures in their hands, they meet their parts out curiously, and either stiffly stands, that so far is his right in law, both hugely set on fire, about a passing middle ground, so greedily aspire both these foes to their several ends, and all exhaust their most about the very battlements, for yet no more was lost. With sword and fire they vexed for them their targes hugely round, with ox-hides lined and bucklers light, and many a ghastly wound the stern steel gave for that one prize, whereof though some received their portions on their naked backs, yet others were bereaved of brave lives, face turned through their shields. Towers, bulwarks, everywhere were freckled with the blood of men. Nor yet the Greeks did bear base back-turned faces, nor their foes would therefore be outfaced. But as a spinster poor and just, we sometimes see straight-laced about the weighing of her web, who, careful having charge, for which she would provide some means, is loath to be too large in giving or in taking weight, but ever with her hand is doing with the weights and wool, till both in just pays stand. So evenly stood it with these foes, till Jove to Hector gave the turning of the scales, who first against the rampire drave, and spake so loud that all might hear, O stand not at the pale, brave Trojan friends, but mend your hands, up and break through the wall, and make a bonfire of their fleet. All heard, and all in heaps got scaling ladders, and aloft. In mean space Hector leaps upon the port, from whose outpart he tore a massy stone, thick downwards, upward edged. It was so huge an one, that 2 vast yeomen of most strength, such as these times beget, could not from earth lift to a cart, yet he did brandish it alone. Saturnius made it light, and swinging it as naught, he came before the planky gates, that all for strength were wrought, and kept the port. 2-fold they were, and with 2 rafters barred. High and strong locked, he raised the stone, bent to the hurl so hard, and made it with so main a strength, that all the gates did crack. The rafters left them, and the folds one from another brake. The hinges piecemeal flew, and through the fervent little rock thundered a passage. With his weight the in-wall his breast did knock, and in rushed Hector, fierce and grim as any stormy night. His brass arms round about his breast reflected terrible light. Each arm held each a dart, his presence called up all the dreadful spirits his being held, that to the threatened wall none but the gods might check his way. His eyes were furnaces, and thus he looked back, called in all fired their courages, and in they flowed. The Grecians fled, their fleet now and their freight, asked all their rescue. Greece went down, tumult was at his height. End of the 12th book.